Even if you know how much psilocybin's in it, you don't know how you're going to interact with this particular mushroom. Like starting low and going slow is the number one harm reduction tool in general for taking substances. Psilocybin is a non-specific amplifier. The way you're feeling going into your experience will probably become more during your experience.
And presented in Cheshire Corners is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult a legal professional if you have any questions or concerns about the content of this disclaimer, this series, or the legal implications surrounding psychedelic substances in your jurisdiction.
Welcome to Cheshire Corners. I'm the AI clone of Rita Salyak, your host, as we trip through the looking glass. Today, at the Psychedelic Cup 2025, Brendan Caldwell, a licensed professional clinical counselor, presents an educational talk on harm reduction and safety considerations related to mushrooms. Speaking from a clinical and mental health perspective, he explores the importance of mindset, environment, psychological screening, and physical well-being in discussions surrounding psychedelic experiences. This presentation is intended for informational purposes only, offering thoughtful insight into risk awareness, mental health factors, and responsible decision-making. Let's jump in.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brendan Caldwell. I'm going to try to speak loudly and clearly so that y'all can see what we're talking about. At any point in the presentation, anyone has questions, there'll be time at the end. I'd love to get some Q&A going, so you know. All right, here we go. All right, so who am I and why should you listen to me? So my background, I've been a licensed therapist for about 2.5 years. I've been working above ground as a psilocybin-assisted therapist for 2.5 years. Before that, I was a psilocybin guy. I worked with many other psychedelics, but psilocybin was one of the main ones. Did that for about 9 years. So I have a lot of experience with psilocybin mushrooms. In terms of harm reduction, I've been volunteering with Dance Safe for about 11 years, or a harm reduction nonprofit to testing and information at live music events. And I've been doing psychedelic peer support through Zendo, Mania, other organizations for about 6 years now. Okay, well, luckily, when it comes to psilocybin in mushrooms, there's not a ton of harm to reduce. And so we're going to go over some basic things that hopefully most of you know, and we can get more in depth with anything that anyone has questions about. So the essential factors for a psilocybin experience to have a good time, to set yourself up for success, is a supported mindset, a supportive environment, and to know your dose, titrate your dose as best you can. So in terms of mindset, so I feel like most of us probably know a lot about how to set up ourselves well in our mind for a psilocybin experience, but in case you don't, a couple of things to watch out for. So I think to set yourself up for success, having a positive mindset, entering the experience with openness and curiosity, not a rigid expectation of what it would be like, is always a good plan. I would avoid having an experience when you're particularly stressed out, or anxious, or emotionally unstable. Psilocybin is a non-specific amplifier. The way you're feeling going into your experience will probably become more during your experience, and it's always good to kind of make as best of a mindset as you can. Obviously, some people are intentionally using psilocybin to explore difficult experiences, mental health issues, and all that sort of stuff. So it's not the end of the world if you go into an experience stressed or anxious. You might just have to deal with whatever that is. Watch what you consume. I really like to recommend my clients watch what kind of media they're consuming before they have a psychedelic experience, especially violent or disturbing content before the experience or during the experience can really change the course of your journey on psilocybin. It's helpful to have clear intentions to really know why you're taking psilocybin. Is it for insight? Is it for healing? Is it for self-discovery? Importantly, I don't believe that you need to have some kind of elevated purpose for using psilocybin mushroom. Hang out with your friends or watch cartoons or dance or any of those things. I think play is a very important intention to bring into the experience, but it's important to be clear on why you're doing it. Or are you doing it to get deep into your content of your mind and actually get some self-discovery going? The mental health preparation, we'll talk a little more about that later. There are certain mental health conditions that it's important to screen for if you're considering psilocybin mushrooms. So I'll just say there are things like that. I also think that, especially if you're going in for exploration, it's really important to prepare your mind. Let's say your intention is self-exploration, self-discovery, personal growth, having a journaling practice, doing meditation for the days, weeks before you take psilocybin, going to therapy. All of those things can be helpful mental preparation to have the right mindset before you go in. In terms of physical health, again, we're going to talk about physical health more later in the slides. I would personally recommend that you avoid tripping when you're feeling especially sick, like with the flu or something. A lot of times you'll feel a lot sicker while you're on mushrooms if you went into it not feeling well. So that's just a general suggestion. Okay. The setting, the outer environment. So I would say, the classic thing is to talk about set and setting. Set is mindset, setting is the environment. I would say the setting refers to the physical space that you're doing your journey in, but also the social environment that you're inside of while you're on mushrooms. So some things to consider. Really, it depends on your intent, how you select your space. But let's say you want to have a pleasant, easy experience with mushrooms. These are some things you can do to sort of set yourself up for success. You want a safe and comfortable space, a familiar location that's quiet, private, free of hazards. Dim lighting is always great, comfortable seating, soft things, squishmallows, blankets, things along those lines are always helpful. Toys to play with, things like that. It's also helpful to have music that's like helpful for your little experience, right? It really just depends on what you're going for. Let's say you want an easy time, gentle time, ambient music is a great choice. You can get more into music selection later if you'd like to sit, and what I like to do. Having like incense can sometimes be helpful. I personally find that a lot of incense is really overpowering, and I don't like that. But there you can get incenses that are natural scents that aren't super intense. You can also go with like mystic sprays or essential oils, especially if you run into trouble while you're in your experience. Aromatherapy can actually really help that. I'm a big fan of using cedar or lavender or sometimes lemony scents can be really nice in those spaces. Okay, the social environment. So you really want to have supportive people around, whether they're your friends that you really trust to hold you in a vulnerable state. One thing I really saw a lot of, especially while I was early in my tripping career, you'd occasionally be around people who had not really explored these states before and think it's fun to fuck with you while you're on mushrooms. I really advise like knowing that people are going to like treat the state you're in while you're on mushrooms with a lot of respect, because it could really go south. Also, like being around people that you have issues with, that you don't like, that you don't feel safe with, it's really going to manifest itself in your experience of major way. So you want to have the right people around you. Some people really like to have a sober trip center. It's there the whole time to sort of like keep the space tended, to support them if they're having a hard time. That's always a great idea. You really want to make sure, again, it's somebody who's familiar with what it's like to be on mushrooms and who has the right intentions towards you. Let's see. Minimize unexpected events. So especially, let's say you're tripping at home, really set yourself up so that the chances that something that will require you to be not tripping doesn't happen while you're tripping, right? So like, if you have like a really high needs dog tends to freak out when you trip, maybe they stay with the pride party. If you're expecting someone to come over in the middle of the day, it's probably not the right day for it, right? Turn off your phone. Don't start to get into conversations with people that aren't there and all of a sudden need to leave or be expected not to be tripping. Have the space be private, lock your doors, et cetera, et cetera. Try to minimize the chances that somebody else is going to come into your experience and suddenly change what's going on. I do think this also applies to choosing who you trip with. I would be tripping with other people who had never tripped before. And you just have no idea how this person's going to handle it. And if you don't want to be supporting someone else's process while they're already tripping, then you probably don't want to trip with that person. Maybe you want to be sober for their first time, or you want to take a really small amount if you can't go, just things go sideways, big sober. So those are all things that I would suggest. In terms of setting your space, I also really think it's helpful to have activities around, right? So like an art section and a section with a lot of things like tactile toys to play with, and cozy, comfy section, and space that you can dance around, and all that sort of stuff. I think that really gives you lots of options. It makes sort of a place to play inside your experience. And you don't have to set it up for it. Music and atmosphere, I already kind of mentioned this. There's a lot. You go on Spotify, there's a ton of playlists that are intended for psilocybin mushrooms. There's a lot of different choices. I really am a fan of like ambient music that is not very, it doesn't center itself in your experience. It's just sort of like there as a support. But lots of different music can be great when you're exploring out mushrooms. So just, try to pick your best. Really depends on your intention. Like if I want to dance around, I'm going to put on dancing tracks to listen to it. Okay, let's see. Accessibility and safety considerations. Have water, blankets, a nearby bathroom accessible. Avoid other substances that are going to be change your experience. We'll talk more about that later. I think a blanket is one of the ones that's especially important. A lot of people, especially on high doses, tend to have this transition between being hot and being cold. And it can be really nice to have something you can easily take on and off. Some other things to think about, if you're going to light candles when you're there, and no one sober is around, that might be something you want to watch out for. Try to avoid things in your environment that are going to potentially cause harm if you're not paying attention to them. Okay. And then know your dose. So we'll talk about this later, but it's helpful if you can to test the potency of your mushrooms for tryptamine content. You can also check for contamination, use lab testing, and then start low and go slow. We'll cover all this stuff, and I'll talk about strains a little bit later too. But I would say between these things, the setting, and the dose, potentially contamination of your mushrooms, you got most bases covered if you're doing those things, so having a good time. Okay. So mental health contraindications. So there are a lot of different things that can be really amplified in the psilocybin space. I would say with all of these, it's not necessarily like if you have one of these conditions, there's a 100% chance that it would be bad for you to take psilocybin mushrooms. These are all conditions that could potentially be exacerbated or made worse by psilocybin, so they're more risk of mixed these things. So schizophrenia and psychotic disorders, there is a tendency with psilocybin to trigger periods of mania following the mushroom experience. People who are especially prone to that mania to kind of get away from them, it becomes a psychotic experience, might have more trouble with mushrooms, more dangerous. Same thing is true of bipolar disorder, especially bipolar 1, where full manic episodes can go 4 days and result in really extreme crashes. Borderline personality disorder, there's just a lot of emotional intensity and instability that can happen while you're in the psilocybin state. And so people that have difficulty with regulating their emotions, like BPD, can be a problem. Same thing, severe depression with psychotic features. Psilocybin can be great for depression. Psilocybin is not super great for psychotic features, so be careful. Suicidal ideation, instability. So when I'm working with people with clinical concerns, the presence of suicidality, it's not necessarily a rule out for me. But I have noticed a lot of times that while people are in the peak of their psychedelic experience, the suicidal thoughts get more loud. They get louder. They might really have to confront some of those things. If you're tripping alone, or if you're tripping with someone who doesn't know how to handle that sort of thing, it could be a really extreme kind of crisis moment where you're afraid to much hurt yourself. So active suicidal ideation is something you want to be careful with. Same thing about general emotional instability. Severe unresolved trauma. So there's certainly a lot of hope with psilocybin-assisted therapy in treating severe trauma, PTSD, complex PTSD. But it's of the medicines you can use to work with trauma, psilocybin is definitely one of the harder ones to work with. A lot of times, the psilocybin is sort of pushing energy through your system. Something is going to come up. It might be the trauma. Psilocybin is very, very good at drawing those things from your subconscious into your conscious, but it doesn't really do anything to make those things easier to do. And so if you're not working with a trauma-informed clinician or somebody who really is able to hold those things containers, you can really fracture and re-traumatize yourself with psilocybin if you have a lot of unresolved trauma. There is a greater race of developing psychosis psychosis or bipolar disorder if you have a family history of it, especially a first-degree relative, so you want to be more careful. That being said, there are tons and tons of people that have that family connection to these disorders and have tripped plenty of times and it hasn't been a problem, so it's just like a watch out. Also, statistically speaking, you're most likely to develop a severe mental illness like schizophrenia between the ages of 16 and 26 years old. And so if you're going to explore altered states of consciousness during this period, there is a greater risk that something will develop that may not have developed otherwise. So those are all things to think about. In terms of a physical overdose from mushrooms, I think the only way to try to explain this is to first talk about what's normal when you're on mushrooms. So this list here is all things that you can expect to happen depending on how much mushrooms you take. The more mushrooms you take, the stronger the mushrooms you take, the more likely you are to experience some of these physical effects. None of these are dangerous. They all wear off as you come off of the mushrooms. Found once pupil dilation, increasing heart rate, increasing blood pressure, nausea. There's a lot of reasons for nausea. We can talk more about it, GI distress. So like stomach cramping, feeling dizzy, muscle weakness. So muscle weakness being like, it feels hard to stand up, it feels hard to sit up, I feel like my body's heavy. Twitching, small amounts of twitching are pretty normal. Sweating, chills, body temperature fluctuations, feeling really hot and really cold. These are all normal. Feel wear off and don't worry about that. Dry mouth. So these physical effects are not ones to worry about. If you're having them, you're not overdosing, you're okay. Okay. These are in very rare cases that there is a physical problem from taking some amount of psilocybin. Usually, if you are mixing psilocybin with either a drug you probably shouldn't mix it with, or if you have an underlying health condition, there are a few situations where it would be a physical reaction. You might want to get medical attention. Severe or prolonged elevated heart rate. So this would be like many hours after you're done tripping, your heart rate is still 120 BPM while you're resting. Something to worry about. Extremely elevated blood pressure, so like a hypertensive crisis level of blood pressure increase. The people who should be worried about this are people with underlying cardiovascular conditions. So uncontrolled or unregulated blood pressure issues. They already have issues with the arrhythmias, their heart, things along those lines. Some extreme chest pain or pressure. And so again, I want to say it's very possible that you're on mushrooms and you feel some amount of chest pain or pressure. This is much more in the line of like a full level, like heart attack kind of situation. If you're really worried about either of these heart conditions, I would highly recommend that you have a sober sitter, and that sober sitter has a blood pressure cuff and a blood pulse oximeter, and you can just find out. is my blood pressure actually in a hypotensive crisis range? Is the big fact that I don't think I can breathe actually true, or is my blood oxygen rate above 90 and I'm actually hungry? Okay, severe nausea or persistent vomiting with dehydration. So this again is much more worrisome if the person's on the back end or they sort of stop tripping and they're still vomiting all the time. They can't hold down food, they can't hold down water, they've been vomiting every 20 minutes for the last 8 hours. You might have to worry about dehydration. And this can happen for people after a mushroom experience. So muscle convulsions. What is the difference between a muscle twitch and a muscle convulsion? So a lot of times the twitching you can see that's common with mushrooms is for instance, you're like looking at your arm and you can see a muscle that's like twitching on its own, right? It's much less common for the person to actually fully be locked up on the floor. They can't control their movement, they're writhing around, they're biting their tongue. That's much more likely to be a seizure. If the person has an underlying seizure disorder and is not taking medication for it, they also should be cautious with using psilocybin because, again, the psilocybin does reduce your seizure threshold, which makes a seizure more common. So you got to be careful with that. So you got to watch for those things. Confusion or disorientation beyond normal psychedelic effects. Again, unless the person has, while they were tripping, hit their head, or you're really concerned that they're like a full psychotic episode that's lasting much longer than after the psilocybin trip should be over, then you might want to consider getting assistance with those things. It is normal to be confused and disoriented on mushrooms, so you don't want to make that call too quick. And I just mentioned, really, the only two conditions that you should be worried about with mushrooms are uncontrolled cardiovascular disease and seizure disorder that is not controlled. I do psychedelic consultations for people, help them evaluate the readiness for using psychedelics or any other kind of science-based question they have about psychedelics. I do psychedelic-assisted therapy, and I do harm reduction. So if anyone wants to contact me, you're welcome to.
Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to Cheshire Corners. Tell me what you think in the comments. And as always, don't get psyched out.